welcome to the Dark Side of Seoul podcast. I am declaring martial law. This is Joe.
This episode of the Dark Side of Seoul is brought to you by our Grand Eternal Leader.
Yeah. So you might have heard something happened in South Korea. As of recording, it was 12 hours ago. Just happened.
A little bit more now. 10:20 p.m. yesterday.
Yeah. Our dedicated listener and buddy Ron Chang informed us all of this because he has his finger on the pulse of everything all the time. He knows stuff before even the people it happens to knows it. Like he'll tell me I have a heart attack before I know I have a heart attack. He's that good.
Yo, are you all right? What do you mean?
I'm
having
fine.
a heart attack.
Perfectly fine. Oh yeah. I'm fine. Double colonoscopy will do that to you. Hey, so we had a little bit of a attempted coup last night in martial law, initiated by our President Yoon Seok-yeol. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about first. We're gonna talk about what Koreans have been saying. Shawn has personally interviewed people about what their thoughts were, and we're going to go into what is martial law, especially in South Korea, and the significance of martial law in Korea, and why this is a big effing deal. So stay tuned. This is good.
Just quick though, before we get into that, so thank you to all the people who are within my network of interviewees that were able to do an interview with me. Weren't many of them because it was very, very last minute. But so last night I also used the word coup, but like you just did, but in reflecting on it after, it wasn't an attempt at a coup because by definition, who would he have been overthrowing?
That is true.
So it wasn't a coup attempt. It was an attempt at installing martial law, which in itself is not a coup. But I guess you have the definition, everything else set in the notes. So we'll get into that in a bit. Like what Napoleon did was a coup. What John Dumas did was a coup, and things like that. So anyway, so just to start with these interviews. So first of all, and again, thanks to Ron, because I needed to confirm some things. I was doing these interviews this morning and I had heard something, but I needed some verification. I needed a source to verify it. And I texted Ron real fast between interviews, and I asked him if he could verify some information with a reputable news source, and he did. So thanks for that, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
I got in touch. So I mentioned before, I think I have a network of interviewees that quite large, who I have done and agreed to be in a network that I can contact for interviews, mostly for heritage research and folklore and stuff like that. But many of them are fine to talk about political issues, as long as they are anonymous. I just don't mention their names. I only mention their age, so just so we can get an idea of their demographics. And so a few of them did respond quick. Most of them actually didn't respond, probably didn't even see my message until too late. And but these are a few that did respond to an interview. And it was pretty short. Most of them were only they were less than 10 minutes. And I just asked people what they felt when they saw the news of military law being enforced or being declared, I guess is the correct verb. And and what they thought at the time, what they thought as they followed the news unfolding, and what they think now, what the result is going to be. So the first one, a 30-something-year-old woman, said that she was extremely frightened, very frightened, when she just opened, someone messaged her and said, look at the news. martial law has been declared. And she just couldn't believe it. So she opened the news real fast. And just seeing the headline, she thought it was a coup attempt. She didn't know. She thought it was the military trying to take over the government, which would be a coup.
Yeah.
And she thought the military initially was trying to overthrow the Yoon government. And then she started reading it, and then she's like, okay, no, it's Yoon trying to enforce martial law. She stayed up all night watching the news until declaration or a reversal was made on the declaration. And she thinks Yoon did this because of all the problems he's going through right now.
Yeah, that's the general sentiment.
Yeah, so he has a very weak hold in government. He cannot get any laws passed because the opposition holds the majority of seats in the assembly, in the cabinet. I guess it is in Korean. That it's not it's a parliament the way parliamentary government, but in the assembly, and also he's scandal ridden, or more correctly, his wife is.
I predicted this right when he was elected, that he would get nothing done because he is a scandal magnet.
Yeah, and also very few presidents get anything done in Korea because they only have one term of 5 years. That's a separate point of discussion, but it's ridiculous, and it's been brought up again now recently that before this issue, that the Korean presidents should have more than one term by law. They should be allowed
have
at least
a chance to have more than one term. Yeah.
Right. So either a system like the US where it's a 2-term by law, or maybe like in Canada where term lengths are 4 years, but there's no limit on terms as long as your party and the people, the electorate, like you can continually be voted in.
Right. And that was the case in America until FDR.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. He did 4
what
terms.
Changed it?
And, well, he did 4 terms, and then the Republicans got in power and they killed it. It's like, nope, term limit.
I had no idea he did 4 terms.
Yeah.
When was he president?
Well, he died. He died during his 4th term.
Oh, okay. All right. But still got elected 4 times.
Right.
And what year, like what?
That would be the Great Depression. So he was after Hoover, the stock crash of 1929. And so he was up until World War II.
Okay. Right. So yeah, I knew
Truman
that
took over after he died and finished up and dropped the bomb.
Okay. Right. Okay. I knew he was president during some major event. So it was the Great Depression. Okay. So anyway, so yeah, they have trouble getting anything done. And Yoon can't get anything done because the opposition keeps blocking everything. And they don't want it. So that's just the way it works. And so he got frustrated and for some reason thought martial law was a good idea.
Really?
But these things that I just stated are not the reasons that Yoon gave for declaring martial law. I guess we'll get into that. I haven't seen
your wife.
I haven't.
Oh no, for Yoon. Never mind.
For Yoon, yeah. No, my wife is not declaring martial law. She has martial law. She has martial law at home.
I misheard you.
But yeah, I guess we'll get into. I haven't looked at your notes yet because we've been so busy.
Oh, I do point in there. This later on. Right. I will go into detail about that.
Yeah, because we were so busy in the last 2 hours, really 2-3 hours, getting this together to in response to the event. But anyway, so then according to this interviewee, she thinks that this is going to speed up impeachment.
Yeah,
she thinks he's cooked, he's done.
Yeah, that's also the general sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, and she finished off the interview saying, Yoon does not deserve the office of president, does not deserve the highest office in the land.
Most of the presidents don't.
Well, yeah, most politicians all over the world don't. But But definitely after this, he
Yeah,
definitely does not
definitely
deserve.
disgraced himself.
But I mean, like he was legally elected, so he deserved the office in that regard.
Yeah.
Let's not try to um, I don't know, because a lot of people will run away with some comments that we might make and say, "Oh, they think he
No,
he
don't believe in
yeah
democracy. No, no,
yeah."
no.
So
It's just, I mean, as far as personality and
mm,
disposition
it's
go, a lot of people don't
absolutely
deserve office because
right.
it requires sociopathic ambition to go this far, and so that's why we end
Mm.
up with so many sociopaths at the top.
And the great irony of it is Korea being so culturally centered around Confucianism. One of the main tenets of Confucianism is only a kingly person is truly able to be king. And
Right,
this could mean that some farmer out in the fields could have the personality of a king and then therefore deserves the throne. But
right.
the one on the throne itself may not be kingly and therefore doesn't deserve it. And I
Yeah.
think Yoon just represented that last night.
Ultimate gapchil.
Yeah, yeah, yes, right. He slapped the
Just
whole nation across the face with
must
kimchi.
the ultimate Karen move.
Another interviewee is a 50-something-year-old man. Lived through a lot. He was a young man during the Gwangju uprising, which was the last time we had martial law, and yeah, very experienced. He saw a lot in his 50-something years. He was very surprised and angry when he saw the news. Started following the news very quickly. Was very worried that with the announcement that with martial law, one of the main things is that the government takes control of media. So he was really concerned about losing access to domestic media, and so he just started watching like BBC and CNN and stuff like that
Oh,
to
interesting.
get information because he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure if the media here was presenting all of the news. So he did,
Most of those outlets were reusing the same feed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but at that time, you don't know. You're confused. Uh, Want to make sure you're getting the
Yeah.
the full story,
I had two.
especially
I had two separate video feeds running at the same time on my monitor, watching both. One
right,
was
right.
outside, one was inside the National Assembly building.
You're like Elvis.
Yeah, man.
Did you shoot your monitor to turn it off? And so then the man said that, of course, this is not helpful to Yoon. It didn't. It would. He also said that even if it succeeded, it would not have been helpful. And of course, it didn't succeed, and so definitely it's not helpful. So he's worried that it might affect the economy. Now, the won did crash,
Yeah.
but this I didn't check I don't follow the markets really.
Let me check it now. I was.
Check in real time, and so, but he's worried that there might be maybe some short-term impact on the economy, but also he's worried about any type of long-term impact or short-term impact on diplomacy in Korea. So, because it's still very, very fresh, he's also worried about Korea's reputation globally. He thinks this is damaging to Korea's reputation globally. He is a businessman, and he's worried if this might have some ripples more deeply throughout Korea and its reputation.
Yeah,
So,
I'm looking at the chart now. There was a big spike, but it's kind of leveled off. It is still lower than it was the day before, but the spike is done. It's stabilizing a bit.
right, which means it'll bounce up by the end of the day. Maybe by the time the markets close.
Yeah.
Maybe not back to what it
I
was
was
yesterday,
so tempted to do arbitrage, or I was so tempted to just buy up a bunch of won.
oh, one of my other interviewees that I'm going to come up. She invests. She did.
Yeah,
She did a bunch of investment last night. She was really worried, but at the
yeah,
same time, she's like, "Ooh, I can actually make money off of this too."
yeah, yeah.
Um,
This is really like buying off of news. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So another thing that the man said is that what's really confusing to him is that Yoon is a lawyer. He knows the law. So he must have known that any declaration of martial law in Korea needs to be approved by the National Assembly. And the declaration can only come legally through very few means. There's only a few cases where it can be accepted legally.
Yeah.
And so he said, Yoon must have known, as a lawyer, he must have known that the National Assembly was going to reject this declaration.
Maybe, but he was a prosecutor, and he was a prosecutor that was trying to gain attention for himself when he was a prosecutor. He was just naked ambition.
But still a lawyer.
Yeah.
Still, he knows law.
Yeah.
Even like you can even ask one of my interviewees, which I couldn't get in touch with today. He works in business law, but I contacted him because I had last year and I had a question about real estate law, and he said, "Well, no, I don't. This is not my specialty." He says, "But yes, I know your answer." And so I think they do know broader.
Oh, he knows
law.
broadly. Broadly, people knew it. Most people knew it. I think it's just badly. He's just a bad politician. Just really bad strategist.
But he also certainly would have known as the president. Yeah, bad strategy. And I'm going to get to the strategy in a minute. So anyway. What someone else commented on that as well that I interviewed. But yeah. So that's what the guy said. He's confused. Yoon must have known that the National Assembly would reject the martial law. So, and I tend to agree. So this is another part of this doesn't make any sense.
No, well, he was counting on the military to keep people. That's why he was doing it late at night, where most of the assembly was not in the assembly. So he was using the military to keep people out of the assembly to revoke it.
I have very interesting thoughts on that coming from another interviewee, a policy expert that I interviewed, which was the big interview I did this morning. Spoke to her for a while. So anyway, and then so this man thinks that the result will very likely be impeachment, or Yoon will just step down.
Okay.
I think he's going to step down. I don't think he's going to go through an impeachment. I think he's going to step down. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think he's not the smartest guy, but he's got to see that.
Yeah. He's. Even his own party doesn't support him now.
Right. No, so he overstepped.
Yeah. So another 30-something-year-old woman that I spoke with said she had pretty harsh things to say. She said she woke up to the news, she slept through it, and woke up and got ready for work and saw messages on her phone and then opened the news and read everything. Of course, everything was done. All the big things were done by the time she read it at like 6 or 7 o'clock this morning. So she woke up to the news. She's a bit angry about the whole thing. She said Yoon, as the president, takes responsibility. Well, the president, she said, when they're elected, their main role is to take responsibility for the nation. And Yoon has shown that he doesn't care about the nation. She feels he hasn't picked up his role as the person responsible for the country and the people. She thinks that Yoon is treasonous. And she pointed out that treason deserves the death penalty.
Is it still valid for the death penalty? Because the death penalty's been...
Well, the death penalty isn't revoked. No, not it's still on the books, but it's put to bed. So we did an episode on this a couple of years ago where the last people who were executed was in the late 90s.
Right.
Mid to late 90s. So that's why like Yoo Young-chul and all these serial killers and whatnot, they since then have not been executed.
Right.
So anyway, yeah. So even if he is charged and convicted of treason, which I do think that it probably does, treason probably does carry death penalty. It probably won't happen. The next president will let him out anyway.
Yeah.
If Chun Do-won got out of prison for what he did in Gwangju, Yoon will get out of prison for this if he goes to prison.
It's just a Korean tradition that conservative politicians spend time in prison.
Right after their term. Yeah. So, okay. And then this was the big interview I did. This was with a policy expert, and I'd never interviewed her before. Actually, she just recently came into my network of interviewees, and through someone else, just through the network, she got introduced to it, and she said, "Yeah, I'll talk to you sometime in the future about any folklore and stuff like that." She's like, "I'm interested in that type of thing." Okay, so she's in her late 20s and she's a policy expert. Her friend is the personal secretary for Woo Won-sik, who is the Speaker of the National Assembly.
Yes, and talk about a star maker. He's the star of this whole thing.
Yeah, and so this person that spoke with this policy expert is close friends with Woo's personal secretary. So she said how the friend, the secretary, and all her other friends that she's met through this friend who work at the National Assembly were all called to work. As soon as this was declared, everyone was called to work. Of course, they were blocked from entering the National Assembly when they got there. There was a police line, but they all jumped the police line and hopped the wall. And I mentioned to her after she was telling me all this, I said, "I think you owe your friend and all your other friends who work at the assembly a coffee for doing their duty against threat of the police." So she's like, "Yeah, I'm going to take them out for beers or something to thank them for that." And so the interviewee said that she initially didn't trust the news when she saw it. Mm-hmm. So she thought
I thought it was fake news. I mean, it kind of looks, the first outlets I saw online that were reporting it were not really reliable outlets.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah. And then she was the same. She felt the same. She thought it was fake news or whatever, or a mistake, some misreporting. And then she messaged her friend because she knows that her friend, they work in the government and at the assembly. And so the friend responded, "Yeah, I'm up. I'm on my way to the assembly now." Mm-hmm. And they were texting back and forth. And so the interviewee said she was very, very worried, especially for her friends. Her friends are still at the National Assembly as of this morning. Mm-hmm. When everything kind of cleared up around 4 a.m., they had to stay at work. They had to stay there. So I don't know if they're gone home now, but she told me that chances are they'll have to work until late tonight.
Someone has to clean up those broken windows.
Yeah, that's right. So
it's knocked over a plant.
Well, I mean, Woo Won-sik is definitely still there, and so the secretaries, his personal aides and secretaries have to be there as well. Yeah. So and then the woman herself, like I said, she's a policy expert. She said Yoon's strategy was very weird and didn't really follow history, the precedents of how martial law usually is established. Mm-hmm. She said, usually military response to martial law is very swift. A president, for example, calls martial law, declares it, and then the military very quickly goes to government buildings to establish themselves there.
Yeah.
But this all happened really slowly.
Yeah, it did.
It was really, really slow. And she said that doesn't make sense. That's poor strategy. If his strategy was to declare and enforce martial law, why did he do it so slowly? She said it just doesn't make any sense.
He didn't give commanders enough head start to know what he was about to do.
Could be, but that highlights bad strategy. Again, like what she said, the strategy was bad. If that's what he did, then his strategy was bad.
That was one of the things watching the videos of the close-ups of the soldier, the military. I mean, these are these young guy, pasty looking. It's like they just dress up nerds in military uniform, and their hearts didn't look like they were in it. They were just like, they looked confused. They were shuffling around, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. They really did not take any control.
Right. And so she furthered and said that it seems she and her colleagues feel that the response from the military was actually not really slow, it was hesitant, meaning that maybe they considered a rebellion against Yoon
Yeah, yeah.
to not follow orders. So now we do know that, it's now come to pass that the famous photo that was passed around that of a tank driving through Seoul wasn't from last night. Apparently it was fake. People started to pass that around saying that it was tanks rolling through Seoul. But no, but we do know that, yeah, some helicopters, helicopters landed at Special Forces helicopters did land at the National Assembly, and I think we should state right now too that we're doing this in real time, actually recording. So we're just a few hours after all this was called off. So it's still really fresh.
We're still learning stuff. Yeah. I remember there was tear gas was released as well, or some type of gas.
Confirmed, or?
I saw it on the video.
Oh, okay.
Live. I saw it live. Now, if it was me and I was trying to keep the military out from the helicopters, I was imagining like a Home Alone situation. I would like put like something slippery on the stairs and a bunch of booby traps.
bunch of micro machines and Hot Wheels.
Yeah. Just go through the booby traps on the roof, on the stairs leading to the roof where the helicopters were landing. That's what you could have done.
Banana peels and shit.
Yeah.
So she thinks in her opinion, her policy expertise, that it looked like the military was perhaps preparing to reject the declaration and rebel against Yoon. So even though the person who was declared the martial law commander is the head of the military, which he was now also going to lose his job, the soldiers themselves, probably the lower ranking but still fairly high ranking commanders, I guess you could say, leaders, whatever, captains, I don't know, they were maybe going to reject it and rebel and come on the side of the people, which would have been cool. But I'm glad it didn't come to anything like that. But to see the military reject a president's declaration of martial law, that would be very interesting.
Instead, it was a passive rebellion where they're just dragging their heels.
Well, they didn't know what was happening. The same thing. So, because of course, the younger soldiers, they had to follow orders. It's the ones above them who were saying, okay, whatever. We don't know this, of course, but not as of now. But maybe let's slow down. Don't go so fast to the embassy, to the assembly.
I bet they were thinking from precedence. They might have thought that they would have gotten in trouble later on after this was passed.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. So anyway, that was a very interesting interview. And I had another interview scheduled with another government worker, and I sent the Zoom link to her, and she jumped on the link. She said, "I'm really sorry, I can't do the interview. I now have to go to work because of all of the senior aides that have quit their jobs." Wow. Senior aides to the president. She's like, "I'm really sorry, I can't do the interview." I was like, "No, that's all right." I said, "But you just given me something cool to say on the podcast anyway." So this is still very active, very, very active right now. So, and we're going to be seeing news unfolding over the next several days, I think. And just quick, so my wife, last night we were in bed, so I saw the news first. I heard it from a friend of mine, Justin, and Justin Toole, who co-hosts the Straight Chilling horror movie podcast, and he sent me the message that I saw first, and then I opened the what was it, the news. And then I showed it to my wife. Our daughter was asleep at the time, and then my wife started reading the news and stuff, and then like every 3 minutes I heard Shiba Michin. Oh, Michin, yeah. She got
Crazy? Oh man. Yeah. Oh, son of a bitch. Ooh, my gosh, she's using the bad words. Oh,
yeah, she doesn't swear. She doesn't have a potty mouth, not like her husband. And so, but she was furious.
Yeah.
She was really, really angry.
Yeah.
And she said something that really, really struck me. And I thought, yeah, this is right. And this must be how a lot of other people are feeling when she said this to me last night. Korea has national trauma about military governments and martial law.
Right.
And she says this trauma is really still it's an open wound still. It's only healed a little bit.
My girlfriend said her hands were shaking.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so my wife said that, yeah, she said, I don't think this is going to stick. She said, Koreans are crazy. Those are her words. She said, Koreans are crazy. She said, they're fiery and they're crazy
about democracy.
Yeah. Crazy, man. And so they said, they're not going to allow it to stick.
No, this is such a big miscalculation too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then of course, when I woke up, she stayed up until 4 a.m. and she watched the, first of all, the number of lawmakers needed to reject it was far surpassed. And then she stayed up a little bit reading more news and blog posts and things like that. And then whenever Yoon made his declaration or his reversal of the declaration on television, that's when she went to bed. So, 4 o'clock in the morning.
I had to watch the movie all to the bitter end.
That's right. Right to the end of the credits.
Yeah.
See if there was a post-credit scene. And no, there wasn't. So here you go. Those are some of the interviews I was able to put together this morning. And again, thank you to all those people because, like I said, this is very last minute. I just sent out messages quick. Yeah. And a few people said yes. And so there we are.
Called for an exciting evening. I was in the middle of phone support with Amazon.com about an order. And anyway, it was similar. Anyway, I'd say it was similar.
I was watching X-Files.
Yeah, it was similar because the National Assembly was the only way to revoke martial law, but because of martial law, the assembly makers couldn't enter the National Assembly. So it's like, oh wow, catch-22 situation, which was the same as my Amazon situation where I ordered this thing back 3 weeks ago. They still haven't shipped it. I'm trying to cancel it, and they said it can't be canceled until it arrives. But I said, but they haven't shipped it. So how can, and they said you can reject it when it arrives. And I'm like, but it won't arrive because they will never send it.
Right.
So like, wow, this is similar to what's happening in Korea right now.
Interesting. Always a parallel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, let's go quickly about what is martial law in Korea. Just to clarify things, it's a big deal here. We've talked about it on some past episodes, especially about Park Chung-hee and Syngman Rhee. And I have some statistics. I have some funny things, some interesting things, some funny things. So stay tuned. But let's go into the technical parts. So Article 7 of the Constitution of South Korea outlines the conditions under which martial law can be declared. It can only be declared by the president during times of war or national emergency to maintain public order or military needs. Now keep this in mind with what was happening with Yoon. Like, did this pass muster?
So Joe, do you mean Article 7 or Article 77? You said Article 7.
Oh, I can't read numbers. Article 77. Yes,
okay,
thank you.
Right. Just to clarify. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. We have constitutional scholar Shawn Morrissey right here.
Hardly. Just reading the notes.
There are two types of martial law. Emergency martial law, which is declared during severe national emergencies or war, allowing for the military to take control over civilian matters, including restricting basic rights and altering the judiciary system, as in military judges as well. And then there's security martial law, which is a more limited form, declared just to maintain public order in times of disruption when the general administration can't secure it alone. And so the notification, the president must immediately notify the National Assembly. And as we saw, the National Assembly can request lifting of martial law, request it. And the president must lift it if a majority of the assembly votes to do so. And the martial law must be lifted when the emergency situation subsides. So keep this in mind. And then there's a big deal before where Yoon was declaring a martial law commander. That's part of the process. The commander of martial law is typically is the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. Lots of S's in that one, and CH's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So the history of martial law, which is one of those Korean words that's tough for me to pronounce, Gaeomryong, in South Korea. It has been declared 17 times in the history of the Republic of Korea. 4 times for the security martial law and 13 times for the big one, the emergency martial law. And martial law in South Korea has often been declared not during national crises, but by military dictatorships as a tool to seize or maintain power. Particularly used during times when the government sought to suppress dissent or restrict the citizens' rights. So you see about this trauma, how this trauma is coming about. And most of them have not been in response to war or true emergencies, so they've not been constitutional. So as a result, martial law is often viewed negatively in South Korea due to its association with authoritarian rule. This is interesting. I found out. So the National Assembly, since the National Assembly can request a lifting of martial law, they are immune from being arrested. National Assembly members are immune from being arrested during this period. This is meant to be as a check of power against the executive. And excuse me. Since the 1987 constitutional reform, martial law has been more tightly controlled. Well, until now. The president can declare it, but the National Assembly must be notified immediately, like we said. And martial law can still be used to silence opposition, which was attempted in this time, especially if protests and demonstrations arise. Anyway, I'm going to go through the incidents. I will quickly go through all 17, but I will spend a little bit more time on ones that have a little bit more significance. The first one was the Yosu Suncheon October 19th incident of 1948. It was the inciting incident was a rebellion by army soldiers and police officers in the Yosu Suncheon area protesting the government's handling of the Korean War and other political grievances. Because remember, it was under President Syngman Rhee. Remember, he was like bravely bold Saraban. He ran away from Seoul when North Korea was attacking, while he told the citizens to stay in place. And so this is significant because it was the first martial law declaration in post-liberation Korea. And it was marked by a violent suppression of a military mutiny. And it was, it highlighted deep tensions between the South Korean government and the military, as well as political divisions in the country during these post-liberation years. And its impact is that it led to military suppression and mass arrests, setting a precedent for future military crackdowns on perceived dissent. The next declaration of martial law, an emergency one, was the Jeju April 3rd incident of 1948. Armed uprising by leftist insurgents on Jeju Island, which we will do an episode on one day. Heavy retaliation from the government and military. Now, we did talk about a lot of the paramilitary were gangsters recruited by Syngman Rhee. Then during the Korean War, July 8th, 1950, this was declared, and that was triggered by the North Korean invasion of South Korea. The significance is that the declaration of martial law during the Korean War was crucial in consolidating power to ensure national security. And martial law helped establish the legal framework for the military's role in governance during the war. Its impact was that martial law enabled full military control over civilian life and law. And the emergency powers also became a cornerstone of how martial law was later utilized during periods of political unrest. Now, there was a second phase of this declaration after November 10th of 1950. That was just continued. Then there was a post-Korean War martial law. And that was in this. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that was not really post-Korean, but this one lasted 123 days. Very long time. And it was a shift to regional control as the war front lines changed, with martial law helping maintain order amidst the conflicts. Then it was expanded in March 23rd, 1951. This lasted 383 days. This is a nationwide martial law declared to stabilize or reassert control over military and civil matters. That was a security one. That wasn't really an emergency one. But emergency one was declared again at December of 51. Ongoing military conflict needed for regional control over specific parts of the country, so it was a little more focused. And then in May 25th, 1952, there was political unrest after the Busan political wave, a period of growing political unrest and opposition movements. Martial law was declared to suppress growing political resistance, particularly from leftist movements. Now, then the Korean War, we had our stalemate. And Syngman Rhee was again trying to exert he was doing a lot of trying to stay in power. I mean, he was rigging elections and stuff. And so it led to the April 19th revolution of 1960, led by like university professors and students against the Syngman Rhee government. And so this martial law only lasted 4 hours. After student protests.
Oh, so Yoon did not make a new record for the shortest martial law.
Well, no, Yoon's was 3 hours. Oh, no. You're
6
right.
hours.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this one only lasted 4 hours.
Hmm.
But it just was lifted due to the collapse of the Syngman Rhee regime, which we remember was basically a U.S. military commander walking up to him and saying, "Get the fuck out."
You're done.
And that was actually a security one. I mean, an emergency one was declared after that. That lasted for 51 days. It was okay. They extended the martial law following the revolution, aiming to stabilize the country under a new leadership, but ultimately failed to prevent Rhee's fall. So anyway, Rhee was still in power. It went like 4 hours and then he was gone. He was trying to stay in power. And then there was the May 16th military coup of 1961, led by General Park Chung-hee. This is a very significant one. The May 16th coup, led by General Park Chung-hee, was one of the most significant political events in South Korean history. Martial law was declared by the military regime as they overthrew the civilian government. This event marked the beginning of over 2 decades of military dictatorship in South Korea under Park's rule, leading to major political, economic, and social changes in the country. This impact signified the military's takeover of the country, suspending democratic governance and leading to the establishment of Park Chung-hee's autocratic regime. Yeah, but it also led to rapid industrialization, which is the gray area on this one, but it also suppressed political opposition.
This is the contentious coup.
Yeah.
In Korea. Yeah.
Then a security one of security martial law after the coup lasted 558 days, started on May 27th, 1961. This is a very long-term martial law. As the military regime took control, they were establishing their dictatorial government. Skip ahead to 1964, the June 3rd struggle. Political crisis sparked by student and intellectual resistance to the military regime. This one lasted for 58 days. And then there was the October Revival on October 17th, 1972. The October Revival was a political move by President Park to solidify his power after the assassination of his political rivals. It was basically to increase his authority. That's when he was redoing the Constitution. The martial law was marked a significant escalation of Park Chung-hee's authoritarian control. After this, he used it to solidify his grip on power. This is very Star Wars. And it introduced the Yushin Constitution era. This is when he went from being, I am just a very popular president to, no, we shall rule with power.
Yeah, and go back because we have the 3-episode series on Park, right? And you go into more detail in that episode.
More detail.
In that series. I'm
just doing that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you want more detail, go back and check out the 3-parter we have on Park and stuff like that.
Yeah. This instance lasted 69 days. Then another emergency martial law was declared in October 18th, 1979, called for the Burma Democratic Struggle, a movement of democracy in the face of Park Chung-hee's increasingly autocratic rule. And it was especially to target dissent in the southern regions, those pesky Jola people.
Okay, Burma.
Yeah. Protests were erupting in the southern regions of South Korea. Martial law was declared to quell the protest, but it reflected the deepening dissatisfaction with Park's government and the growing calls for democratization. The impact was this period saw the increasing use of force against civilians and was a precursor to the broader democratization movements of the 1980s. And it contributed to the weakening of Park's regime, eventually culminating in his assassination later that year, which happened on October 26, 1979. So right after Park Chung-hee was assassinated by one of his own men, the next day, emergency martial law was declared. October 27th, lasted 440 days. It was extended all across the country, with Chun Doo-won seizing power and establishing a military dictatorship, taking advantage of the spread of political chaos. Very intense time. And the impact was this facilitated Chun Doo-won's rise to power and solidified the military's control over the government, leading to a prolonged military rule. And laid the groundwork for the violent suppression of opposition movements, most notably the Gwangju Uprising of 1980.
Yes, and we have an episode. We have so many, and I don't know. We did an episode on Gwangju.
We did that one. Yes, we did,
yes.
On the Gwangju Uprising, and that was in the middle of this period of martial law. When Chun Doo-won declared this martial law, this is when South Koreans were really just getting sick of martial law being declared. And so it just more and more uprisings were happening. But with the previous one by Park Chung-hee, the Burma Democratic Struggle, it gave precedent for Chun Doo-won to use more military force against civilians, which led to the tragedies of the Gwangju Uprising. And guess what, guys? That was the last one. It was lifted in January 24th, 1981. That was the last one until last night.
44 years ago.
Yes.
God.
So, wow. And really, I mean, I saw the protest. It was just a typical protest that we have all the time, every Saturday in Seoul. And we were having a lot of right-wing conservative protests going on against the equal rights amendments, equal rights laws that were trying to be passed here, led by religious groups that did not want, they don't want gays in Korea. I had no problem with that, but as soon as people were protesting against Yoon Seok-yeol himself, declared martial law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's worth pointing out that his approval rating is well below 20%. Well, not well below, but below 20%. It's like
Well, what I
19%.
was reading it was
Now
70%,
it's
but now it's dismal.
70% disapproval rating.
70% disapproval rating.
Right.
Yeah,
So, right.
I think I got that from the New York Times. Chase
Okay.
something.
So I think the last that I read that his approval rating was below 20%.
Well,
Like that was
that
from
could be
like
it.
last week. Yeah, like it was like 19% or something. Now it's probably I don't know, approaching zero. Um,
His
but that
mom, his mom approves of him.
is right. Um, so, but I think such a low approval rating highlights how, yeah, even conservatives don't support him. They don't want him in power,
Yeah.
right? So he's losing support from his base as well, which is the same thing that happened to Park Geun-hye. Her approval rate
Yeah.
during her impeachment was like at 6% or
Yeah,
something.
2017 was when she got impeached. And I think Yoon was seeing the same pattern that he was going to end up like Park Geun-hye.
Right.
And he
Right.
just panicked. He just panicked.
It's just so strange. It didn't inform anyone.
And it kills me because I mean he rose to power. He rose to his prominence by trying to do that to his predecessor Moon Jae-in. He was trying to get him impeached the whole time. He was prosecuting him the whole time. And it's funny because Moon Jae-in is one of the few South Korean presidents who left office without a major scandal.
Without himself, people around him did, like
Yeah.
I think it was his wife and stuff, but not him himself. Yeah,
But
right,
not a major one.
right. His wife is involved in some sort of investment scandal or real estate or something. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, real
but not
estate.
but not him. Yeah, not he himself
Yeah.
didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Not that we know of. So this whole thing, Yoon support. Another thing about Yoon and Park Geun-hye, Yoon was one of the prosecutors of Park Geun-hye.
Yes, that's true. That is true. Yeah.
So
Forgot about
so
that.
he
Yeah.
yeah so he was a conservative that didn't support her as a conservative.
Yeah.
So but yeah, so it just shows that broadly even people are turning on their own party,
Yeah.
which is good. I like that. I hate partisanship. I hate
Just blind partisanship.
just when people blindly support a liberal government or liberal politicians or conservative government or conservative politicians.
Right.
If you're going to vote no matter what for your side, then I don't know. I mean, that means you should be paying attention about who you're voting for. But I like this in Korea. This partisanship doesn't seem to be as strong here, as big here, as it is in say in Canada and maybe definitely
US.
the U.S. The U.S.
Right.
as well.
Even though, I mean, we saw a lot of Republicans be anti-Trump Republicans.
Sure, not the voters though.
Not the voter. Yeah. I think that's why people are now rewatching The West Wing, because the tone of that show was when it comes down to the love of country, partisan lines are crossed and people can get along. It's this wet dream of Aaron Sorkin.
Right. I mean, what's the expression? People putting party over country.
Yeah.
I mean, that's partisanship. I think it's horseshit. Yeah. Yeah. We should be learning all this stuff a little bit more in depth in high school before we get to voting age.
This will be more of one of our more political episodes, where Shawn and I will be talking more about our politics, our personal politics.
Yeah, and hey, if the martial law stuck and it was still in place, and we'd be saying right now how it was a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be tossing the clink.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Korea's never paid attention to us. Why would they pay attention to us now?
Yeah, I know.
That's what's great about us, is we've always been flying under the radar. I love it. I love it. We're one of the top. I mean, Dark Side of Soul tour has been awarded one of the top 1% tours in the entire world. And the Korean tourism organization still doesn't know we exist.
I'm fine with that.
They'll approach me every now and they go, "We would like to introduce your tour. We just found out about your tour," or something like that. Every now and then would say that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, it is like with Shawn's interviews have shown. This instance has jolted the public of how fragile democratic institutions are.
Mm.
And we might see change in the Constitution. No, I'm thinking this. I'm just calling this right now. Hot take is we might see a change in the Constitution about reforming the martial law in the Constitution because it doesn't really is not as needed, even though we're still technically at war with North Korea. I would also point out it seems like all the previous times martial law has been declared, the U.S. military had a little bit more backing of whoever was in power.
Right. Right. I think okay, so there's no martial law in Canada. The War Measures Act was set up in Canada to bring like it's like one step below where it means that the military can come in and do something in terms of war, national emergency, or something like that. But the military in Canada can never control law.
Yeah.
So that's in law in Canada.
Canada doesn't have martial law; it has martial law.
Musolo. That's good. I do think Korea being still technically at war, martial law is necessary, I think, because it's still technically at war.
Yeah.
But but I think the failure of this, and if you look at, you just gave the list of the 17 that occurred since the 40s. The previous 16 were all fairly close together. This is the longest time we've gone without martial law.
Right.
Right. And this one failed. So I think the failure of Yoon's attempt to create martial law highlights that democracy is working in Korea.
Yes.
And
very proud time.
Yeah. And right. I think this is the takeaway that people should have. Democracy is working. People don't want the martial law, and they understand maybe that, yeah, it's necessary. If some shit hits some fans, maybe the military taking over the law might be a good idea in terms of war. But this wasn't that type of situation.
No, it was not.
People rejected it.
It was desperate man trying to cling to power. Just the scorecard though. So the Syngman Rhee 10 times declared martial law. Park Chung-hee and friends, I say other people associated with Park Chung-hee 5 times. Chun Do-won and friends 1 time, and then Yoon Seok-yeol 1 time. So Syngman Rhee is the biggest winner. I was thinking parallels between the January 6th riots in the U.S. is people were trying to break into the Capitol to prevent Congress from enacting law, while the opposite was in Korea, where people were trying to get into the National Assembly to
lawmakers,
to create, to enact. It was the other way around.
Right. And another thing worth noting is that, there was, like I mentioned earlier, how the policy expert believes that the military was dragging its feet because it seemed to hesitate as if they were going to start rebelling against Yoon. It didn't come to that, of course. I think like as she was saying, she thinks they were waiting to see what was going to happen in the assembly, which was all they needed to stop this.
Yeah.
But there was full-on opposition from powers within the government. So Yoon ordered the governor of Gyeonggi-do, Kim Dong-yeon, to shut down the Gyeonggi-do government office. So when he declared martial law, he ordered them shut the office down. Governor Kim refused. He said, "That's illegal. I'm not going to do this."
All right. So we're going to see a lot more political rising stars from this incident.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Speaker Wu would be one.
Yeah. I think he might run for president eventually in the future. I think Kim Dong-yeon is a candidate. The one problem is that it looks like Lee Jae-myung is still brutally unpopular, and he's a terrible politician.
Horrible person.
And I think he's a shit person as well. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, my girlfriend said, and I'll quote her, "He is the politician I dislike the most since Syngman Rhee."
There you go.
That's extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that means she likes Pak Chung-hee more.
She's a good
and
Jola
Chun
girl.
Do-won.
She's a Jola girl, man.
Jola girl, there you go.
Woman. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So it's really maybe helped Lee Jae-myung, but I don't think he's still popular enough even within the party to make any headway with this.
Yeah.
I think these other people are going to rise and be the real stars and the heroes of this.
I have hope. It's just the pattern. I mean, Moon Jae-in got it. Okay, so remember, Park Geun-hye got in power because after she lost to Lee Myung-bak. And then Moon Jae-in got into power because he had previously lost to Park Geun-hye. You know, things like this. You're seeing this pattern, and then Lee Jae-myung lost to Yoon Seok-yeol, and he'll come back. That's what I fear of. Now, this is something I really found interesting because of Yoon's speech. Because I read the text of his speech, and then he was actually laying out what you could say was a fairly well structured argument, just talking about political gridlock. Things aren't happening. We need to do something, and then boom, just suddenly invoked North Korea.
Yeah, so weird. What the fuck?
It's just so suddenly bizarre. In the middle of it. It's like it's just coming in and suddenly North Korea. It's like it was just this sudden non sequitur that came in.
Weird.
Yeah. And so Yoon was just laying this out, and then suddenly, it's North Korea. We're going to get North Korea out of our government.
Yeah, yeah. So he was suggesting that there were pro-North Korean people within the assembly and the government and stuff like that. And people are like, "What are you talking about? What are you getting on with? It's so foolish." Yeah, it was just such a weird thing.
But it was a Kanye West style non sequitur. I mean, this is this classic red baiting, McCarthy-esque red baiting.
Yeah.
It fires at the conservative base, but in this case, also it alienates your moderates and your liberals.
Right.
And it's a classic tactic used by the right because it ignites that fear, the lizard part of the brain.
Right.
It's sometimes used by progressives, but it actually is a more effective tool of the right. It's their favorite. It's very reliable. It works. Make people scared.
Yep.
Yoon just didn't read the room on this one.
Nope.
But in global,
it's very, very bad nunchi.
Yeah, bad nunchi. But we're seeing more and more conservative populist leaders around the world using similar authoritarian tactics in the guise of national security and combating internal threats. It's been happening in Europe and around the world. Be prepared. The second Trump administration could give us more of this too. So it's a preview.
Yeah, and it's possible. Hopefully, if things like this do happen, the response will be similar, where it just gets shut down.
Yeah, get ready for more talks about the deep state, about the media, more attacks on the media. Be prepared for all this.
Yep, it's going to be interesting times. But one thing I'm really happy about is that with the failure, there will be no curfew. And we can still run the Dark Side of Seoul tour.
Yeah,
that really did strike
really
me last night.
About that.
I was like,
we're worried about our own personal stuff, and then my girlfriend was talking about that too. Like, it's going to hurt our business. Her the company she works for.
Right.
So. I'll also point out, though, in Korea at least, no leader of a progressive party has ever declared martial law. It's always been conservatives.
There you have it. And there you have it.
Okay, well, I think we'll conclude on that one.
Got
any media recommendations for us?
Yeah, of course. And something like this deserves media recommendations. And martial law appears in a lot of film and television, actually, and just fiction itself, because it can be a frightening thing to experience. So it becomes part of a plot point in a lot of fiction. The first one I'll mention is a Korean film, 12/12 The Day, which is from either early this year or late last year, which is about the establishment of martial law in Korea. on the on 12/12, so December 12th. Which one was that? I'm blanking out which one that was. Was it the Park Chung-hee during that era? I can't remember.
Let me see.
I don't recall. But yeah, I didn't see the movie to be fair. But that is a movie that's about martial law being declared in Korean history. So try that. 12/12 the day. The other one, classic, The Crazies, the 1973 George Romero original, not the remake. The Crazies, just a great movie. Martial law is a big part of that film. Dawn of the Dead, sorta. Dawn of the Dead, essentially, yeah, there is martial law, but you don't really see it as part of the film. It's more implied, I suppose. It's stated, if I'm remembering right. It's been a while since I've seen it. It's stated, but it's pretty much implied. It's easily inferred from the film that that everything's in a. I mean, there's a zombie outbreak, so of course the military is going to take control of everything. And the other one, two films, two pieces of shit. Martial Law Parts 1 and 2, martial art films where an undercover detective goes, links up with a martial art expert, and they go take down some gangs.
And that's spelled spelled Marshall.
Oh no, that's the Sammo Hung show. No.
Okay, never mind. I was wrong. Okay, yeah.
No. So Marshall here is martial art. It's the martial art. They're martial arts movies. And Sammo Hung show, yeah, they say that because he's a marshal, so it's a play on words. So, but no, martial law parts 1 and 2. It's nothing to do with martial law. It's just martial law means martial arts in the film. So I just want to bring that up because as soon as I saw it, I was thinking of media recommendations. I thought of those two movies. So if you like shitty martial art movies from the 90s, go for it. Yeah. Watch those.
I'm trying to scratch my memory, but the first time I ever heard of the term martial law, I think was in the 1974 disaster film Earthquake with Charlton Heston. If I remember, it's one of those disaster movies where they declared martial law and then they started shooting looters. It's really scary to me. It was really frightening me. And I was like a teenager at the time. It frightened me.
I mean, yeah, that's why everyone was frightened last night when we got the news. It's like, what the fuck? Martial law? And I think martial law is also something that's not really in anyone's vocabulary. Like, who talks about martial law all the time?
In modern democracies, yeah.
Yeah, like it just, when you hear it, you're like, what? What is that? Wait a second. What does this mean again? And you look up the definition. Yeah. You're like, oh, yeah, right. I forgot. That's what it means. Fucking hell. Yeah. So there you go.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Remember, we do have comic book. It is the giving season. If you want to, if you're thinking of giving someone something really interesting about Korean culture, we do have the Dark Side of Seoul Weird Tales from Korean lore books. Now, if you order the physical hard copy, we use the slow boat to save costs, so it likely won't show up in time for the Christmas. But you can get the digital version.
And if you're in Canada, Canada Post is on strike, so yeah, just wait a little bit.
Yeah, because Canada's not declaring martial law to get over that strike. No.
It's postal law.
Yeah.
Go postal, man.
Well, the Dark Side of Seoul podcast was produced by Joe McPherson and Shawn Morrissey with extra help from Ronald Chang. I was going to call Ronald Moore. Like, no, Ron Moore, Battlestar Galactica, Ronald D. Moore. No, Ron Chang, the amazing Ron Chang. Our opening closing music is by Startup Sound, which you can find on Bandcamp under Jeju Digital. Okay, everyone, until next time, stay safe and stay spooky.
Good night.